It was 3:47 a.m. when the mansion's silence was shattered. Lightning split the sky, thunder shook the windows, and deep in the West Wing, alarms began to scream. Inside a $1 million sleep chamber, James Morrison, the billionaire who owned half of Manhattan, was fighting for his life. His hands pounded against the glass until his knuckles bled, his breath fogging up the inside of the chamber. The machine was supposed to heal him, but now it was hissing, sparking turning into a coffin. Help! His voice cracked, swallowed by the hum of failing machinery. Somebody please. And then a sound he didn't expect. Not a doctor, not a security guard. A small, calm voice cutting through the storm. Mister, why are you crying in that scary box? James's head whipped toward the sound. Through the glass, he saw a little girl barefoot, clutching a stuffed elephant, her eyes wide but not afraid. You don't understand, he gasped. I'm James Morrison. I have more money than most countries, but I can't even close my eyes and sleep. The girl stepped closer, her tiny reflection staring back at him in the glass. Money can't buy sleep, mister, but I know what can. And in the next few minutes, this 8-year-old child would do something no world-class doctor, no expensive machine, and no amount of money have been able to do in 18 months. She would give him peace, but how she did it will leave shock you. Welcome to VickyTale, where we bring you the most incredible, true stories that will touch your heart and change your perspective on life. If you're new here, I'm so grateful you found us. Now, let me tell you about a night that changed 2 lives forever. This is the story of how an 8-year-old girl taught a billionaire the most valuable lesson money can't buy. The grandfather clock in James Morrison's Hamptons estate struck midnight, but for him, it might as well have been midday. He sat in his $50,000 Italian leather chair, staring at screens that showed stock prices from Tokyo, London, and New York. Numbers that used to excite him now felt like meaningless symbols dancing before his exhausted eyes. 18 months. That's how long it had been since he'd experienced what most people take for granted, a full night's rest. What started as occasional insomnia after his wife, Sarah's tragic car accident, had evolved into something far more sinister. His body had forgotten how to surrender to sleep. Mr. Morrison, Dr. Patricia Wells, his personal physician, knocked on his study door. Behind her stood Dr. Michael Chun, the sleep specialist he'd flown in from Switzerland, and Dr. Rebecca Hayes, a neurologist from Johns Hopkins. 3 of the world's best medical minds, and they all wore the same expression: professional concern, masking growing desperation. The new sleep chamber is ready for tonight's session, Dr. Wells said, her voice gentle but firm. This technology represents the absolute cutting edge of sleep therapy. Sensory deprivation combined with targeted electromagnetic stimulation. If this doesn't work, she didn't finish the sentence. They all knew what she meant. James stood, his movements slower than they'd been 6 months ago. At 38, he looked a decade older. His usually sharp blue eyes were rimmed with dark circles, and his athletic frame had grown thin from his body's constant state of stress. How much did this miracle machine cost? He asked, though money had long ceased to matter. $2.7 million, Dr. Chin replied. But Mr. Morrison, if we can reset your sleep cycle, restore your REM patterns. Save the sales pitch, doctor. I've heard them all. James walked toward the door. Let's just get this over with. The sleep laboratory occupied the entire west wing of his estate. What used to be Sarah's art studio had been transformed into something resembling a space station. Monitors lined the walls, displaying brain waves, heart rhythms, and breathing patterns. In the center sat the chamber, a sleek, pod-like structure that looked more like a tomb than a bed. As the medical team prepared their equipment, James's thoughts drifted to the woman who used to make sleep effortless. Sarah would curl up beside him, her blonde hair spread across the pillow, and somehow her presence alone would quiet his mind. Now, even surrounded by millions of dollars worth of technology, peace eluded him. Meanwhile, 3 floors below, in a modest apartment above the garage, Helen Morgan was tucking her daughter into bed. "Mommy, why does Mr. Morrison always look so sad?" Katie asked, her brown eyes wide with innocent concern. Helen paused in her straightening of Katie's small bedroom. As head housekeeper, She'd worked for the Morrison family for 12 years, since before Katie was born. She'd watched James transform from a driven but happy entrepreneur into a haunted shell of himself. Sometimes grown-ups carry heavy feelings, sweetheart, Helen said carefully. Mr. Morrison lost someone very special to him. Like how I lost Addie. Helen's heart clenched. Katie's father had walked out when she was 4, leaving them both to rebuild their lives. Similar, but different. Mrs. Morrison didn't choose to leave. Katie considered this with the seriousness only children possess. Maybe someone should tell Mr. Morrison it's okay to be sad, but he doesn't have to be sad forever. That's very wise, baby girl. But Mr. Morrison has doctors to help him. Doctors fix bodies, Katie said, settling into her pillow. But who fixes hearts? Helen kissed her daughter's forehead, marveling at the wisdom that seemed to flow naturally from this 8-year-old child. Good night, my little philosopher. But sleep wouldn't come easily for Katie that night. Thunder rolled across Long Island Sound, and rain pelted their small windows. She'd inherited her mother's light sleeping, but unlike Helen, she'd also inherited an almost supernatural sensitivity to others' pain. At 3:30 a.m., Katie gave up trying to sleep. She slipped on her butterfly print bathrobe and her fuzzy slippers, grabbed her stuffed elephant Mr. Peanuts, and decided to get a glass of milk from the kitchen. The main house felt different at night. Larger, emptier, full of shadows that seemed to move in the corners of her vision. Katie had been in these hallways hundreds of times, but never alone, never in the middle of the night. She was heading toward the kitchen when she heard something that made her freeze. A sound that didn't belong in the elegant, quiet halls of the Morrison estate. Someone was crying. Not the soft weeping she sometimes heard from her mother's room on the anniversary of difficult days, but the desperate, gasping sobs of someone drowning in their own despair. The sound was coming from the West Wing, the part of the house she'd been strictly forbidden to enter. Katie hesitated. Mr. Peanuts clutched tightly to her chest. Her mother's rules were clear. The West Wing is Mr. Morrison's private space. We never, ever go there. But the crying continued, raw and broken, and Katie's heart ached with recognition. She knew that kind of pain. She'd felt it herself on nights when she missed her father, when the loneliness felt too big for her small body to contain. Before she could talk herself out of it, her feet were moving toward the sound. The West Wing was darker than the rest of the house, lit only by the blue glow of electronic equipment. As Katie crept closer, she could see through an open doorway into what looked like a room from a science fiction movie. And there, in the center of all that technology, was Mr. Morrison. He was trapped inside a glass chamber, his face pressed against the interior surface, his eyes wide with panic. The machine was making strange humming and clicking sounds, and lights were flashing in patterns that made Katie dizzy. But worst of all, Mr. Morrison was having trouble breathing. His chest was rising and falling too quickly, and his hand was shaking as he pounded against the glass. Katie didn't think. She just acted. "Mister, are you okay in there?" she called out, her small voice somehow cutting through the noise of the malfunctioning equipment. James Morrison's head snapped toward the sound. Through his panic, through the fog of exhaustion and terror, he saw something impossible. A small girl in a butterfly bathrobe, holding a stuffed elephant, looking at him with concern instead of fear. "Who? Who's there? How did you get in here?" His voice was muffled by the chamber, but Katie could hear the desperation. "I'm Kaki. I heard you crying. Why are you in that big scary box?" The question was so simple, so innocent, that it cut through 18 months of medical jargon and complex explanations. James found himself answering honestly for the first time in longer than he could remember. "I'm not crying. I'm a grown man. I don't cry. My mommy says it's okay for grown-ups to cry when they're scared. Are you scared?" The question hung in the air between them. Here was this child, couldn't be more than 8 years old, asking him the one question that no doctor, no therapist, no business partner had ever dared to ask so directly. Was he scared? I haven't slept in 3 days. This machine was supposed to help me, but now I'm trapped and... His voice broke. The admission felt like a dam bursting. "Don't worry, mister. I'll help you. I'm really good at helping people feel better. James almost laughed, but it came out as a sob instead. You don't understand, little girl. I am James Morrison. I own buildings taller than clouds. I have more money than most countries, but I can't even sleep like a normal person. Katie tilted her head, considering this information with the gravity of a judge weighing evidence. Money can't buy sleep, silly, but I know something that can help. Trust me. And somehow, impossibly, he did trust her. Katie walked around the chamber, examining it like a puzzle she needed to solve. The control panel looked complicated, with dozens of buttons and switches, but she noticed something the panicking billionaire had missed: a simple red button labeled Emergency Release. Hold on, mister. I think this will help. She pressed the button. The chamber hissed as it depressurized, and the glass door slid open. James tumbled out, gasping for air, his legs shaky from the adrenaline crash. He found himself on his hands and knees on the laboratory floor, breathing hard. Katie knelt beside him, her small hand patting his shoulder the same way her mother comforted her after nightmares. It's okay now. You're safe. The scary box can't hurt you anymore. James looked up at this child who had just freed him from his technological prison. Her dark hair was messed up from sleep. Her bathrobe was too big for her small frame, and she was looking at him with a kind of pure compassion he hadn't experienced since Sarah died. What's your name? He asked, his voice hoarse. Katie Morgan. My mommy is Helen. She cleans your house and makes sure everything is nice for you. Helen's daughter. Of course. Helen Morgan had been his housekeeper for years, efficient and invisible in the way the best domestic staff managed to be. He'd barely registered that she had a family of her own. Katie Morgan, he repeated. How old are you, Katie? 8 3/4. How old are you? 38. She nodded solemnly. That's really old. No wonder you're so tired. Despite everything, the failed experiment, the embarrassment of being rescued by a child, the bone-deep exhaustion that made his entire body ache, James Morrison laughed. Actually laughed for the first time in months. Yes, he agreed. I'm really old, and I am really tired. Katie settled cross-legged on the floor beside him, Mr. Peanuts in her lap. Want to tell me why you can't sleep? Sometimes talking about scary things makes them less scary. James studied this little girl who spoke like she understood things far beyond her years. There was something about her presence. Maybe it was her complete lack of judgment. Maybe it was the way she'd risked getting in trouble to help a stranger that made him want to open up in a way he hadn't with any of his expensive doctors. I lost someone very important to me, he said slowly. My wife. She died in a car accident, and ever since then, I can't turn my brain off at night. Every time I try to sleep, I see the accident. I think about all the things I should have done differently. Katie nodded, as if this made perfect sense to her. When my daddy left, I couldn't sleep either. I kept thinking maybe if I'd been a better kid, he would have stayed. The simple honesty of her statement hit James like a physical blow. Here was this child, articulating feelings he'd spent thousands of dollars in therapy trying to understand. Do you still think that? He asked. Sometimes. But mostly now I know that grown-ups make their own choices and kids can't control them. My mommy told me that some people leave because they're scared or sad or confused, not because of anything we did wrong. James stared at her. That's very wise, Katie. I learned it the hard way. Want to know what helped me sleep better? He nodded, genuinely curious. I started talking to the scared feelings instead of trying to make them go away. Like I'd say, hi, scared feeling. I know you're trying to keep me safe, but right now I need a rest. And then I'd imagine my daddy tucking me in, even though he wasn't there anymore. The simplicity of it was staggering. While he'd been fighting his grief with technology and medication, this child had learned to acknowledge it, to work with it instead of against it. Katie, he said softly, would you mind staying here for a little while? Just until I fall asleep? She smiled, the kind of radiant smile that seemed to light up the entire laboratory. Of course, Mr. Morrison. That's what friends do. And for the first time in 18 months, as this unlikely little guardian angel sat beside him in his sterile, high-tech sleep lab, James Morrison felt something he'd forgotten existed. Peace. His eyes grew heavy as Katie hummed a soft lullaby. Nothing fancy, just a simple tune her mother used to sing to her. The The sound mixed with the gentle rain against the windows, creating a symphony more effective than any machine. Within minutes, the billionaire who couldn't buy sleep was drifting off, watched over by an 8-year-old girl who understood that sometimes the most profound healing comes from the simplest human connections. But as James finally surrendered to sleep, neither he nor Katie realized that Helen Morgan had woken up to find her daughter's bed empty. She was at that very moment searching the house, her heart pounding with a mother's worst fears. The real test of their unexpected friendship was about to begin. When James Morrison woke up 7 hours later, sunlight was streaming through the laboratory windows for the first time in months. He blinked, disoriented. 7 hours. 7 continuous hours of sleep without nightmares, without medication, without the crushing weight of grief pressing down on his chest. Katie was gone, but she'd left Mr. Peanuts sitting on the chair beside him with a note written in careful 8-year-old handwriting. For when you feel scared again. Your friend, Katie. Mr. Morrison? Helen Morgan's voice came from the doorway. Her face was pale with worry and something else. Fear of losing her job. I am so sorry. I found Katie's bed empty this morning, and when I searched the house. James sat up slowly, his mind clearer than it had been in over a year. Helen, please don't apologize. Your daughter, she saved my life last night. Helen's expression shifted from fear to confusion. Sir, the sleep chamber malfunctioned. I was trapped, having a panic attack. Katie found me and got me out. Then she stayed with me until I fell asleep. James stood, marveling at how steady his legs felt. She gave me the first real rest I've had since Sarah died. Tears welled up in Helen's eyes. Mr. Morrison, I'm so sorry for your loss. And I'm sorry Katie broke the rules about the West Wing. It won't happen again. Actually, James said, surprising himself, I was hoping it would happen again. That evening, as Helen finished her duties and prepared to head home to the garage apartment, she found James waiting in the kitchen. I have an unusual request, he said. Would it be possible for Katie to visit me again tonight? Just for a little while, to help me sleep? Helen studied her employer's face. The dark circles were still there, but something had changed. There was hope in his eyes that hadn't been there before. She's just a child, Mr. Morrison. I don't want her to feel responsible for her. I understand your concern. But Helen, I haven't slept properly in 18 months. Last night, for the first time since Sarah died, I felt peace. If Katie is willing, and if you're comfortable with it, I'd like to ask for her help. Helen was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, let me talk to her. 20 minutes later, Katie appeared in James's study, still wearing her butterfly bathrobe, but now accompanied by her mother. Hi, Mr. Morrison, Katie said cheerfully. Mommy said you want to be friends. I like that too. Katie, Helen said gently. Mr. Morrison has been having trouble sleeping since his wife went to heaven. You helped him last night, but I want you to know that it's not your job to fix grown-up problems. Katie considered this seriously. But if I can help, shouldn't I? You always tell me to help people when I can. James knelt down to Katie's eye level. Your mom is right, Katie. It's not your responsibility to fix my problems. But if you'd like to be my friend, maybe we could spend a little time together in the evenings. Would you like that? Katie's face lit up. Could we talk about stuff? I like talking to you. You listen to me like I'm a real person, not just a kid. You are a real person, Katie. And yes, we could talk about anything you want. And so began the most unusual friendship James Morrison had ever experienced. Over the next 2 weeks, Katie would visit James each evening around 8 o'clock. Sometimes they'd sit in his study, sometimes in a laboratory with the sleep chamber permanently shut off, and sometimes on the terrace overlooking the sound. Their conversations were unlike anything James had experienced with adults. Katie asked direct questions that cut through his psychological defenses. Do you think Mrs. Sarah would want you to be sad forever? She asked one evening. No, James admitted. Sarah always said I worried too much about things I couldn't control. Then maybe being sad forever is like arguing with her, even though she's not here to argue back. The simplicity of her logic was devastating and healing at the same time. Another night, as thunder rolled across the water, Katie noticed James tensing up. Storms make you think about the accident, don't they? She said. How did you know that? Because storms used to make me think about the night Daddy left. It was raining really hard, and he said he was just going to the store, but he never came back. James felt his chest tighten. I'm sorry, Katie. That must have been terrifying. It was. But you know what I learned? The storm didn't make Daddy leave. Daddy leaving during a storm was just a coincidence. Now, when it storms, I remember that weather is just weather. It can't actually hurt the people I love. That night, James slept through his first thunderstorm in 18 months. If you've ever had a child teach you something profound about life, drop a comment below. Sometimes wisdom comes in the smallest packages. But it wasn't just James who was healing. Katie began to bloom under the attention of someone who truly listened to her thoughts and feelings. You know what's funny? She told him one evening. Before we became friends, I used to pretend I had a daddy who would come home and ask about my day. Now, I don't have to pretend anymore. James felt something crack open his chest. Katie, I need to ask you something important. Are you helping me sleep because you want to, or because you think you have to? Katie tilted her head, considering the question with her characteristic seriousness. At first, I helped because you looked so sad and scared, like how I feel when I have nightmares. But now I help because you're my friend, and friends take care of each other. What if I told you that you've already helped me more than you can imagine? That even if we just talk sometimes without worrying about whether I sleep or not, that would make me happy. Katie's smile was radiant. Really? You'd still want to be my friend, even if I can't fix your sleeping? Katie Morgan, you are one of the most important people in my life. Sleep or no sleep. As their friendship deepened, James began to notice changes in himself beyond just better rest. Colors seemed brighter. Food tasted better. He found himself laughing at Katie's observations and stories in a way he hadn't laughed since Sarah's death. At Morrison Tech Solutions, his employees noticed the change too. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it, said Marcus Webb, his chief operating officer, during a board meeting. Your decision-making has been sharper these past 2 weeks than it's been all year. But James was keeping his friendship with Katie private. He wasn't ready to explain how an 8-year-old had accomplished what teams of specialists couldn't. Dr. Patricia Wells stood in James's study, her face flushed with professional indignation. She'd come for their weekly check-in and discovered that her patient had been sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night for 2 weeks straight. Without medication, without the sleep chamber, without any of their prescribed treatments. Mr. Morrison, I need to understand what's changed. Have you started new medication? Are you seeing another specialist? The improvement in your sleep patterns is remarkable, but I need to document what's working so we can maintain your progress. James shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I've been talking to someone about my grief, working through some things. A therapist? That's wonderful. Who are you seeing? I like to coordinate with them. It's not a therapist exactly. Dr. Wells frowned. A spiritual advisor? A support group? She's 8 years old. The silence in the room was deafening. I'm sorry, what? James took a deep breath. My housekeeper's daughter has been helping me process my grief and anxiety. She has a remarkable ability to cut through psychological complexity and help me see things clearly. Dr. Wells sat down heavily. Mr. Morrison, are you telling me that you've been conducting therapeutic sessions with a child? I'm telling you that a child's friendship has given me more peace than 18 months of medical intervention. This is completely inappropriate. Dr. Wells's voice rose. A child cannot and should not be responsible for an adult's mental health. This puts an enormous psychological burden on her, not to mention the liability issues, the potential for emotional damage. She's not responsible for my mental health, James said firmly. She's my friend. She talks to me like a human being instead of a patient. She asks honest questions and gives honest answers. When was the last time anyone in your profession did that? Dr. Wells stood up, her medical bag in hand. Mr. Morrison, I cannot in good conscience continue to treat you if you're involving a child in your therapy process. This arrangement needs to end immediately. After she left, James sat alone in his study, Dr. Wells's words echoing in his mind. Was he being selfish? Was he putting too much responsibility on Katie's small shoulders? That evening, Katie arrived for their usual visit, but James seemed distant. Are you okay, Mr. Morrison? You look sad again. Katie, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. Do you ever feel like you have to take care of me? Like it's your job to make sure I'm okay? Katie climbed into the big chair beside him, her legs swinging freely. Sometimes I worry about you, like how I worry about Mommy when she's tired from working all day. But worrying about people you love isn't the same as feeling responsible for them. Mommy taught me that. What do you mean? Well, I love Mommy, and I want her to be happy. So I try to be good and help around the house. But if Mommy has a bad day at work, that's not my fault. Her feelings belong to her, just like my feelings belong to me. James stared at this little girl who understood emotional boundaries better than most adults. So, when you help me sleep, you don't feel like you have to fix me? Katie shook her head. I can't fix you, Mr. Morrison. Only you can fix you. I just sit with you while you do the fixing. Like how you can't make plants grow, but you can give them water and sunlight and good dirt. The wisdom of her words hit him like a physical blow. She wasn't taking responsibility for his healing. She was simply providing the conditions that allowed him to heal himself. Katie, some people think it's wrong for us to be friends. They think I'm asking too much of you. Katie's brow furrowed. Do you think you're asking too much of me? I don't want to hurt you or put pressure on you. Do I seem hurt to you? James looked at this vibrant, confident, articulate child who had blossomed over their weeks of friendship. No, you seem happy. I am happy. Before we were friends, I used to feel invisible, like I was just the maid's daughter and nobody really saw me. But you see me, you listen to my ideas and ask what I think about things. You make me feel important. James felt tears welling up in his eyes. You're important, Katie. You're one of the most important people in my life. Then why would anyone think our friendship is wrong? It was a question James couldn't answer because when he really thought about it, he couldn't understand it either. But their conversation was interrupted by the sound of sharp voices coming from the kitchen. Helen's voice, raised in anger, something James had never heard before. I don't care what your fancy degree says. My daughter is not some psychological experiment. James and Katie rushed toward the sound, arriving in the kitchen to find Helen facing off with Dr. Wells, who had apparently returned with backup. Dr. Chun and another woman James didn't recognize. Mrs. Morgan, Dr. Wells was saying, we're concerned about the psychological impact on your daughter. Having a child feel responsible for an adult's mental health can cause lasting emotional damage. My daughter doesn't feel responsible for anyone's mental health. Helen shot back. She has a friend who happens to be an adult. There's nothing inappropriate about their friendship. Mrs. Morgan, the unknown woman, interjected, I'm Dr. Sarah Kim, a child psychologist. What Mr. Morrison is doing relying on a child for emotional support is called emotional parentification. It's a form of psychological abuse. The word abuse hung in the air like a bomb. Katie stepped forward, her small voice cutting through the adult arguments. Excuse me, but you're talking about me like I'm not here. All the adults turned to look at the 8-year-old in the butterfly bathrobe. You are here, sweetheart, Dr. Kim said in a patronizing tone, and we're trying to protect you. From what? From feeling like you have to take care of Mr. Morrison's feelings. Katie looked confused, but I don't take care of his feelings. His feelings belong to him. I just sit with him sometimes when he's sad, like how friends do. Honey, adults shouldn't ask children to help them with grown-up problems. But Mr. Morrison didn't ask me to help him. I wanted to help because he looks scared, and I don't like seeing people scared. And he helps me too. How does he help you? Katie straightened up, her voice growing stronger. He listens to me. He asks about my day and remembers what I tell him. He makes me feel like what I think matters. He's teaching me about business and science and how to be confident. Before we were friends, I felt like I was just invisible. Now I feel like I matter. Dr. Kim exchanged glances with Dr. Wells. This wasn't the response they'd expected. Katie, Dr. Wells said gently, do you ever feel like you can't leave Mr. Morrison alone? Like something bad will happen if you don't help him sleep? No. Sometimes I'm too tired for visits, and that's okay. Sometimes Mr. Morrison is busy with work, and that's okay too. Friends don't have to be together all the time. James stepped forward. I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding here. Katie isn't my therapist or my caregiver. She's my friend. Yes, her friendship has helped me heal, but that's what friendship does. It helps us become better versions of ourselves. Mr. Morrison, Dr. Kim said firmly, an 8-year-old child cannot consent to being an adult's primary emotional support. She's not my primary emotional support. She's my friend who happens to have wisdom beyond her years. This has to stop, Dr. Wells said. For Katie's psychological well-being and your own professional reputation, this relationship needs to end. The room fell silent. Katie looked up at James with wide, frightened eyes. Are you going to stop being my friend? James knelt down to her level, his heart breaking at the fear in her voice. Never, he said firmly. Katie, you are my friend, and nothing anyone says will change that. Dr. Kim stepped forward. Mrs. Morgan, if you allow this to continue, we'll be forced to contact Child Protective Services. The threat hit the room like a thunderclap. Helen went pale. You take my daughter away because she has a friend? We'd investigate whether this environment is psychologically safe for her. Katie burst into tears, the first time James had ever seen her cry. Why are you trying to take away my friend? I'm not hurt. I'm happy. James felt something inside him snap. He stood up, and when he spoke, his voice carried the authority of a man who'd built an empire. I think you all need to leave. Now, Mr. Morrison, Dr. Wells began. Now, after the doctors left, the kitchen was quiet except for Katie's sniffles. Helen sat down heavily at the kitchen table, her head in her hands. I can't lose her, Helen whispered. She's all I have. James sat down across from her. You won't lose her. I won't let that happen. Mr. Morrison, these people have power. They can make our lives very difficult. Helen, I have power too. And I'm going to use every bit of it to protect Katie and preserve our friendship. Katie climbed into her mother's lap. Mommy, I don't want to stop being Mr. Morrison's friend. Helen hugged her daughter tightly. I know, baby. I know. James looked at this mother and daughter who had given him back his life and made a decision that would change everything. Have you ever had a fight for a friendship that others didn't understand? Sometimes the most meaningful connections are the ones people try to tear apart. Let me know in the comments. The next morning, James Morrison did something he hadn't done in over a year. He called an emergency board meeting at Morrison Tech Solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, he said to the assembled executives, I'm about to tell you something that will probably sound insane, but I need your support. He told them everything. The 18 months of insomnia, the failed treatments, the night Katie found him trapped in the sleep chamber, their friendship and his remarkable recovery. So let me get this straight, said Marcus Webb, leaning back in his chair. An 8-year-old girl succeeded where teams of doctors failed. That's right. And now those same doctors want to end the friendship that's clearly working. Correct. The boardroom was quiet for a long moment. Then Rebecca Torres, the chief legal officer, spoke up. James, from a legal standpoint, there's nothing inappropriate about a friendship between you and this child, especially with her mother's knowledge and consent. The doctor's threat to call CPS is likely an intimidation tactic. What do you recommend? We fight back. We document everything. We get character witnesses. We show that this friendship is beneficial to both parties. Rebecca paused. But I have to ask, are you prepared for this to become public? Because if we fight this, it will. James thought about Katie's tears the night before, about Helen's fear, about the friendship that had saved his life. I'm prepared. What James Morrison didn't expect was how quickly the story would explode. Within 48 hours, the headline, Billionaire's friendship with maid's daughter sparks controversy, was trending on social media. The story had everything: wealth disparity, class conflict, medical controversy, and an adorable 8-year-old at the center of it all. The media circus was immediate and intense. Some outlets painted James as a predator taking advantage of a vulnerable child. Others portrayed him as a grieving widower finding healing through innocent friendship. Child psychologists debated on news shows. Social media was divided between #ProtectKatie and #FriendsHaveNoAge hashtags. Through it all, James tried to shield Katie and Helen from the worst of it, but it was impossible to completely protect them. One morning, as James was reviewing legal documents in his study, Katie appeared in the doorway. She looked smaller than usual, overwhelmed by the chaos surrounding them. "Mr. Morrison, are you going to be in trouble because of me?" James immediately set down his papers and opened his arms. Katie ran to him and climbed into his lap. "Katie, listen to me very carefully. None of this is your fault. You did nothing wrong. The only thing you did was be a good friend to someone who needed one. But the people on TV are saying mean things about you and about me. People say mean things when they don't understand something. They're not saying mean things about you, Katie. They're saying mean things about an idea they have about you. They don't actually know you." Katie was quiet for a moment, processing this distinction. "Do you know what I think?" she finally said. "What do you think?" "I think some grown-ups forgot how to be friends. Like, really be friends. So when they see real friendship, it scares them because they don't remember what it feels like." Once again, James was struck by her wisdom. "You might be right about that. Mr. Morrison, even if the mean people win, even if we can't be friends anymore, I want you to know something." James felt his throat tighten. "What's that?" "You saved me too. Before we were friends, I felt really alone sometimes. Like maybe I wasn't important because my daddy left. But you make me feel like I matter. Like my thoughts and feelings are valuable. You gave me that gift, and nobody can take it away." James hugged her tighter, overwhelmed by the depth of love he felt for this extraordinary child. "Katie, you're the most important person in my life. And no matter what happens, that will never change." But even as he made that promise, James wondered if he'd be able to keep it. The pressure was mounting from all sides. His own lawyers were advising him to distance himself from the situation. The media attention was affecting his business. And most importantly, the stress was taking a toll on Katie and Helen. That night, as James lay awake, his insomnia returning for the first time in weeks, he made a decision that broke his heart. Maybe everyone was right. Maybe he was being selfish. Maybe the kindest thing he could do was step away, let the controversy die down, and allow Katie to have a normal childhood without the glare of public scrutiny. But as he reached this painful conclusion, he heard a soft knock on his study door. "Come in." Katie peeked around the door, Mr. Peanuts in her arms. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "I kept thinking about the mean people on TV and how they want to stop us from being friends." She walked over and climbed into the chair next to his desk. "Mr. Morrison, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course." "I asked God to help me understand why people want to hurt our friendship. And you know what I think God told me?" James leaned forward, genuinely curious about her 8-year-old theology. "Some people are so hurt inside that they can't believe in good things anymore. They think if something makes people happy, there must be something wrong with it. But that's not true. Good things are still good, even when hurt people can't see them." She looked directly into his eyes with a maturity that took his breath away. "Our friendship is good, Mr. Morrison. It makes us both better people, and that's worth fighting for." In that moment, James Morrison realized that this 8-year-old girl had more courage than he did. She was willing to fight for their friendship while he was preparing to surrender. "You're right, Katie. Our friendship is worth fighting for. So we're not giving up?" "We're not giving up." Katie smiled and settled more comfortably in her chair. "Good, because I have an idea about how to show people that we're really okay." "What's your idea?" "What if we let people meet us? Like really meet us? Not the scary stories they make up, but the real us? Maybe if they see how normal and happy we are, they'll understand." James considered this. "You mean like an interview?" "Maybe. Or we could invite some of the nice reporters to have dinner with us and Mommy. Show them how we really are when we're together." It was a risky strategy, but Katie was right. The only way to combat the false narrative was with the truth. The next day, James made a decision that would either save their friendship or destroy it completely. He was going to let the world meet the real Katie Morgan. What do you think Katie should do? Sometimes the bravest thing is to stand up and show the world who you really are. Let me know in the comments what you'd do in her situation, and don't forget to subscribe to VickyTale for more incredible true stories that will touch your heart. The interview that would determine their fate was set for the following week. But neither James nor Katie knew that their biggest test was still to come. Because sometimes when you're fighting for something precious, you discover that the real enemy isn't the people trying to tear you apart. It's your own fear of losing what you love most. The final battle for their friendship is about to begin. Will an 8-year-old girl's wisdom be enough to change hearts and minds? Find out what happens next.